That day, Los Angeles seemed to take a break from the city's usual noise. The sun shone gently, as if through a thin veil, the sky looked like it had been brushed with watercolors, and the wind wandered between the trees in the park, carrying the scent of freshness and peace. Angelina Jolie walked slowly, instrumental music playing in her headphones, soft piano, almost transparent. She had deliberately chosen a weekday morning, when most people were still rushing about their business, and the parks were nearly deserted. It was at times like this, away from the rush, that she could hear herself. She had long loved this corner of the city. There was something calming about it, the old benches, century-old trees, and a pond with ducks that children came to feed on weekends. This time, Angelina turned onto a barely noticeable path she didn't usually take. Not out of fear or secrecy, she simply wanted something new, spontaneous, alive. After walking a bit further, she noticed a girl. She was sitting on a wooden bench beneath a tree, slightly hunched over, brushing paint across a piece of paper attached to an easel. A sketchbook rested on her knees, and beside her, a box of paint jars stood. At first glance, it was an ordinary scene, but something about it caught Angelina's attention. Perhaps the silence surrounding them, or maybe the sheer focus with which the girl worked. Angelina stopped. Took a closer look. The girl was about 13, 14 at most. She wore an oversized sweater stained with paint, jeans ripped at the knees, and sneakers with faded laces. Her hair, thick and dark, was tied in a messy bun, and her face was furrowed in concentration. But what really caught Angelina's eye was what lay beside the girl, a whole stack of drawings. Some were done in watercolor, others in pencil, and nearly all of them unfinished. One portrait had no eyes, another had a detailed face, but no hair. Landscapes faded out at the horizon, as if the artist didn't dare to look beyond. One drawing showed a woman standing at a door, but the door was just a blank white space, as if deliberately erased. Intuition nudged Angelina to step closer. "You draw beautifully," she said softly, not wanting to startle her. The girl flinched and turned around. For a few seconds, she simply stared, as if not immediately recognizing who was standing before her. "Thank you," she finally said quietly. "I didn't think anyone was watching." "Sorry if I startled you," Angelina smiled. "I was just walking by, and couldn't keep walking." She gestured toward the drawings. "But why are so many of them unfinished?" The girl hesitated. She placed the brush on the holder and looked down at her paint-stained hands. Then she answered, without looking up. "I don't have much paper. If I mess up, I have to throw it away. And if I finish it, I might ruin it. So I just stop when it starts to feel risky." Angelina slowly sat on the edge of the bench. She had heard many things in her life at the sad and beautiful, but something about that phrase felt deeply mature. Beyond her years. "And the paints?" she asked. "You need a lot to paint like that." "I buy them second-hand, sometimes I ask my art teacher at school. Or I just mix what's left. Sometimes the colors turn out weird, but even weird colors can be interesting." She suddenly looked directly at Angelina. Her gaze was open, not scared, but somehow guarded. She wasn't asking for help, wasn't complaining, just explaining, plainly. "What's your name?" Angelina asked. "Emma." "Beautiful name." "My name is—" "I know," the girl interrupted, but not rudely. "You're Angelina Jolie. I watched the movie about the boy and the butterfly. It was really beautiful." Angelina smiled. Usually, when she was recognized, it was followed by shy admiration or sudden excitement. But this was a calm acknowledgement, almost casual. "Thank you. Do you always paint here?" "Almost every day. When my grandma sleeps after taking her medicine, I leave. It's noisy at home, the TV is always on. But here, it's quiet." "And your parents?" Emma sighed. Her eyes drifted over the surface of the easel. "Mom went away to work. She promised to come back in the summer. Dad's not around. Grandma's old, but kind. Just gets tired easily." A pause settled between them. Angelina looked at Emma, so young, but with the eyes of someone who had seen too much. Have you ever thought about applying to an art school? Or entering competitions? There's only one contest at our school for the best Earth Day poster. The kids with good markers always win. That line was bitter and precise. Angelina felt something tighten inside. Not pity, but a kind of maternal anger at how unfair the world could be. And do you want to be an artist? Truly? Emma nodded. Yes. So much. When I draw, I forget everything else exists. It's like I can make the world different, more beautiful. Only, art supplies are expensive. And lessons are even more. And what if you could paint as much as you wanted? With any paints in your own place? The girl frowned. I wouldn't stop. I'd paint everything I haven't yet. Everything's still stuck in my head. Angelina closed her eyes for a second. The music in her headphones had ended, and all that remained was the park silence, the whisper of the wind, and that voice, uncertain, but strong. She took out a business card from her bag. Handed it to Emma. If you ever want to talk, just talk, call me. I'd love to see more of your art. Finished, or not. Emma took the card with 2 fingers, gently, as if afraid to smudge it. Thank you. But why would you want to? Angelina stood, straightened her coat. Because when I was little, I was afraid to finish my drawings too. And one day, someone just gave me a chance. No explanation, they just did. I think now it's my turn. She smiled and slowly walked down the path, leaving behind the bench, the girl, and a whole world of unfinished lines that, one day, might become a masterpiece. It had been a week since Emma first saw Angelina Jolie, not on a screen, but in the park, right beside her. And yet, that encounter still lived in her memory, not like a dream, not like a fantasy, but like something very real, like a flash of light amidst routine days. She kept the business card carefully tucked inside her notebook, taped down so it wouldn't get worn. Not because she expected a call, more like a talisman. Something inside told her it hadn't just been a polite gesture. Then, on Thursday, her grandmother called her to the door and said a man had come with a note. A man in a black blazer politely handed her an envelope with her name written in neat, calligraphic handwriting. Inside, a simple invitation. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., at the art studio on Brooks Avenue. I want to show you something. Angelina. Emma stood at the doorway, clutching the envelope. The world suddenly felt different. Not scary, just unexpected. As if a door had opened where there had always been only a wall. On Friday, she arrived a little early. She had spent a long time picking out what to wear, not to look pretty, but not to seem out of place. In the end, she put on the same faded sweater, but underneath it, a white shirt. She did her hair as best she could and dabbed her lips with Vaseline. And of course, she brought a few of her drawings, the ones she loved the most. The address led her to a 1-story building with large storefront windows. On the glass, Studio 17. Behind it, white walls, high ceilings, wooden tables, and a light. So much light. She hesitated. Then pushed the door open. Inside, it smelled of fresh paint, wood, and something else, new, clean. The space was almost empty, but it carried a feeling, like something important was just about to happen. "Hi," came a familiar voice. Emma turned. Angelina was standing by the window, in jeans and a black shirt, no makeup. In her hands, a cup of coffee, and on her face, that same soft smile. "You came. I'm glad. Is this really all yours?" "Not exactly," Angelina said, taking a sip. "I just rented the space for a couple of months. I figured something good could be born here." She set her cup on the windowsill and walked closer. "Emma, I don't want you to see this as charity. Or a handout. That's important to me. When I saw your drawings, I felt something familiar. It wasn't about technique or story, it was a feeling. Honesty. You don't just want to draw, you need to. That's rare. And if I can help you open that up, I want to try. Emma didn't know what to say. Her throat tightened. It was too much. Too unexpected. But why a studio? I'm just a schoolgirl. I don't even really know how to. Exactly. Because you don't know how yet, and that's a good thing. Because you're free. Free from expectations, from patterns. Here, you can draw however you want. Without fear of getting it wrong. I'll get you canvases, paints, paper, whatever you need. And if you're okay with it, I'd like to invite someone, a young artist I used to work with. She could drop by a couple times a week, if you ever want to talk about technique. Only if you want that. Emma slowly walked toward the window. The light spilled across the wooden floor, casting long shadows. There was something almost magical about the space. Like it had been waiting for her. I don't know, she whispered. I'm scared I won't live up to it. Angelina knelt down beside her and looked her in the eyes. We don't have to live up to anything. We just have to be honest. I don't expect masterpieces. I just want you to give yourself permission to try. That's all that matters. Emma suddenly hugged her folder of drawings to her chest. I brought them. The ones that mean the most to me. Would you like to see? Very much. They sat at the table by the window. Emma opened the folder. Angelina watched in silence. One by one, portraits of people Emma might never have met, but somehow felt. Sadness in their eyes, shadows on their cheeks, restrained lines of the lips. None of it perfect, but all of it breathing with something special. You see the world differently from most, Angelina said. You don't just copy. You feel. I just look at people. And imagine what they feel when no one's watching. For a moment, there was silence. That is art, Angelina said softly. Seeing the invisible. You already can. The next 2 hours flew by. They explored the studio supplies together, tried turning on the lights, opened boxes of brushes. For the first time in her life, Emma held a professional watercolor set in her hands. All of this is yours now, Angelina said. Come by whenever you like. I'll leave you the key. I'll drop in sometimes, if you don't mind. Are you sure? More than sure. And also, she pulled out her phone. I thought, if you don't mind, maybe I could keep a small blog about this. No names, nothing personal. Just sharing the process. Maybe other kids like you will be inspired. Emma smiled. It was unexpected, but nice. That's okay. When she left, it was already getting dark outside. In her hand, a small envelope with the key to the studio. Inside her, a tremble, excitement, and, for the first time in a long while, the feeling of being truly seen. The studio was silent. It breathed light, dust, and the scent of fresh paint. Inside, it was so quiet Emma could hear her own footsteps creak on the wooden floor. It was her first visit without Angelina. No conversations, no instructions, just her and the empty space. In her bag, her sketchbook, a bottle of water, a snack, and headphones. But she didn't want music. Just silence, where something new was being born. She took out a canvas. Clean, white. And stood before it like it was a page too frightening to mark. It happens, when you dream of freedom, and when it finally comes, you don't know how to begin. Emma ran her hand across the canvas. It was cool, slightly rough. The paints were laid out, the brushes neatly in a jar. But she kept stalling. She wandered around the studio, examined the board by the wall where sketches could be pinned. She climbed onto the windowsill and watched how the sunlight danced on the pavement. She wasn't waiting for inspiration, it doesn't come like in the movies, with sudden revelation. She was waiting for silence inside herself. The kind of silence from which the most important things can be heard. Nearly an hour passed before she taped the edges of the paper to the table and began to draw. Not right away, not confidently. At first, just lines, thin, almost ghostly. Then, a little bolder. She began with the eyes. Not because it's the usual way, but because it was the most important thing. The gaze. She always started with it. If the eyes didn't come out right, the whole piece failed. It was a little girl. Very young. With hair in a messy bun. Her eyelids a bit puffy, like she'd just been crying. Next to her, an old plush toy. And in her gaze, there was so much pleading. Tenderness, confusion. Emma knew exactly who she was drawing. Herself. But not who she was now. The 6-year-old version, when her mother was still alive. When everything was falling apart, and she tried not to notice. She had never drawn that girl before. But she'd always been with her. Always. Each brushstroke was a step inward. Emma lost track of time. Sometimes she stepped back, looked at the whole image. Then sat down again. Added a line. Fixed the cheek. Then, the clothes. Not bright, but grey. The colour of loneliness. More than 3 hours passed before she finally set the brush down. The painting wasn't perfect, not in proportions, not in technique. But it was honest. Alive. As if it came from within. She sat across from the canvas, like sitting in front of a mirror. The girl's eyes looked back at her, as if asking, "Do you remember me now?" Emma sighed. Tears came on their own, without sobbing, without pain. Just as confirmation that she had given herself permission to remember, to acknowledge, to draw. That evening she came home with a light fatigue. Not physical, emotional. But there was a strange joy in her. Quiet, pure. The joy of knowing she had something to say. The next morning, Angelina sent a short message. "How was your day in the studio? Want to show me something?" Emma didn't reply right away. Then she photographed the painting and sent it. The reply came 2 minutes later. "I won't say anything. Because this is beyond words. This is a beginning." A couple of days later, Angelina came to the studio again. She brought new canvases, a set of pencils, and a book on 20th century artists. They sat at the table. On it lay the very painting. Emma didn't hide it, she was no longer afraid. "That was hard to do, wasn't it?" Angelina asked, looking at the drawing. "Very. But I'm glad I did it. It shows. It's like a scar translated into color." Emma smiled. "I kept thinking where to start. Then I realized, if not with this girl, I would never begin." "She's lived inside you all this time?" "Yes. And probably always will." Angelina picked up the book and opened it to one of the pages. There was a work by Francis Bacon, a distorted face, as if screaming in silence. Artists often draw not what they see, but what they're afraid to remember. And that's not weakness. That's courage. "What you did already says a lot." Emma nodded. Inside, there was silence. She no longer felt fear in front of the canvas. Now it was her ally. Later, they had tea by the window. Angelina told her how, in her youth, she traveled through India with a notebook, sketching faces of people she met on trains. Emma listened like it was a fairy tale. And suddenly she realized they had something in common. Not in biography. In how they saw the world. In how they heard not the loud things, but the barely noticeable. Before leaving, Angelina approached the painting. "What will you call it?" Emma thought for a moment. "I remember you." 2 weeks had passed. The studio had filled with breath, life had moved in. New pieces by Emma stood on the easels, surrounded by sketches, notebooks, and boxes of paint stacked on nearby shelves. Angelina no longer came every day, but she would call from time to time to check in and drop by once a week with books, new brushes, or simply a warm smile. One day, she arrived with an idea she had been holding onto for a few days. "You know, I was thinking. What if this Sunday we open the studio doors? Just hold an open day. No big deal. Just come and take a look." Emma frowned. "What do you mean? For whom?" "For whoever wants to come. Kids from the neighborhood. Maybe someone like you, who draws on benches but doesn't know where to go. I don't want to turn this into a school. This place should remain free. But sometimes, freedom needs an invitation." Emma hesitated. She was scared. Not of the people, but of the responsibility. Who was she to inspire anyone? Angelina noticed her hesitation. "You don't have to teach anyone. Just be yourself. Tell them how you paint. Show them your first painting. The space will take care of the rest." After a short pause, Emma nodded. "Let's try it." Angelina posted the announcement in the local library, on the neighborhood's online board, and even passed it along to a nearby art school. Open day at the studio. For everyone who wants to feel how colors sound. Free entry. Age doesn't matter. On Sunday, the studio opened a bit earlier than usual. Emma was the first to arrive. She wore a loose paint-stained shirt, her hair tied in a bun, and there was a cautious nervousness in her eyes. She made tea, placed eucalyptus branches in vases, and laid out her works on a long table. In the center, her first painting. The one with the girl with sad eyes. By noon, the first guests began to arrive. First, a mom with a boy around 10. Then, 2 teenage sisters. After them, an elderly couple, just curious. Then, another girl, very quiet, clutching a notebook she didn't let go of. Emma felt strange. Like she had opened her diary in front of strangers. But no one judged. Everyone looked carefully, gently. Some just stayed silent, as if afraid to disturb the fragile atmosphere. In the corner of the studio, she had set up a second easel, and offered it to anyone who wanted to try painting. Nothing complicated. Don't be afraid of the lines. Just draw whatever comes to mind. The boy, his name was Lucas, came up first. He drew a house, and next to it, a dinosaur. Then the girl, Naomi, began sketching something resembling a night forest. Thin trees, glowing dots like stars. The sisters joined. One painted a bird, the other, only shadows, without objects. It was amazing how different they all were. And everything they made felt alive. Angelina spent the whole time sitting on a bench by the window. She didn't say a word. Just watched. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she closed her eyes, as if listening to music no one else could hear. At one point, the quiet girl with the notebook, almost invisible, approached Emma and asked softly, "Can I show you my drawing?" "Of course." The girl opened her notebook. Inside, dozens of sketches. Done in rough pencil. Hands. Profiles. Flowers. Portraits. All restrained, as if she was afraid to draw too much. But there was power in those lines. Feeling. "This is amazing," Emma said, genuinely moved. "Did you study somewhere?" The girl shook her head. "Just, at home. We don't have money for classes. But I draw every day." Emma felt a tightness in her chest. It was like an echo, as if someone had spoken her own words, but in a different voice. "What's your name?" "Lana. Would you like to come here?" "Not as a student. As an artist. Just to be here whenever you want. Our doors are always open." Lana's eyes widened. "Really?" "Absolutely." She looked at Emma with the same wonder that Emma had once looked at Angelina. Evening came quietly. The guests began to leave. Some said thank you, one left a card, another woman left a box of cookies as a thank you for the atmosphere. On the shelves, drawings, some unfinished. On the walls, new traces of life. Angelina came up to Emma. "Well? I didn't expect to feel this way." "How?" "Like I have something to share. Not just my art, but myself." Angelina smiled softly. "That's what it's all about. Art isn't about perfection. It's about transmission. Through yourself. Through your hands. Through your gaze." Emma looked at her painting. On the table lay Lana's drawing, a girl with wings, sketched in charcoal. Delicate, almost airborne. "This wasn't for them," Emma said. "It was for me." "Welcome to the next chapter," said Angelina. "You're no longer just an artist. Now you're a space for others." Late in the evening, Emma closed the studio door. She was tired, but felt light inside. Behind her remained the smell of paint, echoes of children's laughter, and a quiet feeling that something had begun. And she wasn't just a witness to that beginning. She was part of it. Several months passed, and the studio became a place where new faces arrived every day. Emma began to feel not just like the owner, but like someone creating something bigger than just a space for creativity. Here, an atmosphere of acceptance and freedom was born, something that many children and adults, who had lost hope in art as a path to self-expression, had long been missing. Lana continued to come every day, sometimes with brushes, sometimes with pencils, and sometimes just to sit in a corner and observe others. Emma noticed how she became more confident with each visit. Her drawings began to include details that hadn't been there before. The eyes became brighter, the lines sharper, and each image started to tell its own story. "You're really not afraid to show this to people?" Emma asked one day, seeing Lana proudly display her latest works to visitors. Lana shrugged. "Why be afraid? It's like being afraid to breathe. I draw. And that's all I can do. If someone sees it, then they see it." Emma realized that Lana was already much further along than she had ever been. The girl wasn't seeking approval, she was simply creating. And that was amazing. One day, during one of Angelina's visits, Emma, after a brief conversation, suggested, "How about we have our first exhibition? Our own?" Angelina raised an eyebrow. "Are you serious?" "Yes. The studio has grown, and we already have a lot of works. Why not show them? We could invite friends, acquaintances. Just show what we've been doing here." Angelina smiled. "I'm in. A studio like this should have a place for a celebration of creativity. When do you want to do it?" "Well, honestly, I haven't thought about dates. But the sooner, the better." A few days later, they set the date, 2 weeks from then. Emma began preparing. Not only did she choose the best works, but she also started thinking about how to organize the space. The walls were painted, the lighting was fixed, and new canvases appeared on the tables for those who decided to try their hand at painting during the exhibition. Lana seemed ready for the moment. She was showing her work more often, discussing it with the other participants. But one of her concerns remained. She had a hard time imagining how her drawings, full of personal experiences, could be appreciated by someone she didn't know. "I only draw for myself, Emma," she said one day, sitting on the floor among the canvases. "I don't know what will happen if someone judges me." Emma sat down next to her, watching as Lana carefully examined her paintings. "Lana, you don't draw for anyone else. You draw for yourself. But if your work can help someone see something important they might not notice in their own life, why not give them a chance?" Lana looked at her with gratitude, but with a slight fear in her eyes. She wasn't confident, but Emma sensed that this was only temporary. The girl was learning and growing. On the day of the exhibition, the studio was filled with guests. There was a large group of local artists, a few teachers from art schools, Angelina's friends, as well as children and their parents, invited by the studio participants. The walls were adorned with paintings by Emma and Lana, and empty canvases stood on the tables for painting. Angelina sat with a cup of tea by the window, observing the scene carefully. She approached anyone who was interested in art and explained how everything began. "This studio is for those who want to speak to the world through a brush," she said. "It doesn't matter if you're talented or not. The only thing that matters here is this, to paint from the heart." Emma guided the visitors through the studio, explaining how the artists worked, showing paintings that depicted everything, from beloved animals to strange abstractions. "This is Lana's work," Emma said, pointing to a painting of a woman whose hair gradually turned into tree branches. She painted it when she first thought about becoming an artist. One of the teachers approached and looked at Lana's painting. Emma tensed, unsure of what he would say. "This is a very interesting technique," he said, examining the painting. "Simple, but powerful symbolism. Did you use any new materials?" "No," Lana replied, standing next to him. "It's just emotions. I don't know what exactly. I just painted what I felt." The teacher nodded, and Emma felt her chest swell with pride. Later, when the exhibition was nearing its end, Lana approached Emma and said, "I didn't think people would look at my work like that." "You didn't know that until you tried." Lana, silently nodding, looked at her creation hanging on the wall. She no longer felt fear. She was an artist, and that was enough. Angelina approached both of them. "I'm proud of you." Emma smiled, but her smile wasn't the same as before. It was the smile of someone who had just discovered something bigger than the creative process itself. It was the smile of a mentor who had taught, but had also learned a lot. As the guests began to leave, Lana quietly whispered, "Are we really going to keep going?" "Of course," Emma replied. "We've only just begun." And in that moment, Emma realized that the small steps she had taken in this studio weren't just steps for herself. They had become steps for Lana. For all the children who had once been afraid to dream of their own. And for the world, which sometimes forgets that art is not just images, but a whole universe inside us. Several months had passed since the first exhibition in the studio took place. The studio, which Emma had started with a dream and a great deal of doubt, had now become a place where new ideas were born and real masterpieces were created. But as it often happens, when a certain path seems complete, new challenges appear on the horizon. Emma was sitting in her office, flipping through art books, when Lana entered and quietly said, "Emma, you know, I've been thinking more and more about the fact that I need to move forward. I want my paintings to become part of something bigger." Emma looked up from the book and smiled. "You're right. We've accomplished a lot, but this is just the beginning. I feel like we need to go beyond this studio. Your works, they can inspire many people, not just here, in our little corner." Lana sat on the edge of the desk, a bit embarrassed but also full of determination. "I was thinking maybe I should try creating my own series of paintings. I've always painted for myself, but now I feel that if my work can touch people, maybe I should find a way to tell them my stories through art." Emma thought deeply, realizing that Lana was taking an important step. She was ready to move forward, and perhaps it was time for her art to become accessible to a wider audience. "That's a great idea," Emma said. "We could organize a major exhibition not just for our local guests, but for artists and collectors from all over the city. We need to find a bigger space. Maybe even partner with a museum or a gallery. That would give your works the chance to be seen." Lana looked at her with gratitude, but also a hint of fear. "Do you really think I'm ready? That my paintings will be good enough?" Emma smiled and took her hand. "You can't keep painting just for yourself. That's not your path. You've already proven to everyone that you can create art that touches hearts. So yes, you're ready. Let's do this together." A few more weeks passed, and the idea of a large-scale exhibition began to take shape. Emma and Lana teamed up with several galleries and museums in the city to organize an event that promised to be a real cultural happening. It wasn't just an exhibition, it was a whole project that included other artists and local masters, inspired by the success of the studio. On the day of the exhibition opening, Lana stood next to Emma, nervously adjusting her hair. There was no fear on her face, but rather amazement at how many people had come to see her paintings. Angelina was also present, supporting both of them. "Are you nervous?" Emma asked. I can't say I'm not, Lana replied, smiling slightly. But this is also unusual. I never thought my paintings could be part of something so big. Emma looked at her, realizing how much Lana had changed over time. The girl who had started painting to escape pain and loneliness was now standing among people whose eyes sparkled with admiration for her creativity. Emma was proud of her. This is your victory, Lana. You deserve it. As the first visitors began to enter, one of Lana's paintings immediately caught their attention, a woman with sprawling branches whose eyes were not painted. Instead, the empty eye sockets reflected everything she had ever experienced: sadness, joy, fear, dreams. The guest stood frozen in front of the painting, and Emma felt her heart fill with pride. And she realized that this was not just an exhibition. This was the whole journey they had taken together with Lana. Later, when all the guests had left and the studio had emptied, Emma sat on the entrance steps, looking at the stars and thinking about what was next. Lana sat next to her. That was amazing, she said quietly. I thought I'd never be able to show people my work. But now, I know I can. Emma looked at her and nodded. You not only can. You've done it. Lana turned to her and added. You always said that art isn't just about painting. It's a way to understand the world and share yourself. I only realized that now. Emma sighed and said. We're all searching for something, Lana. Some are searching for happiness, some for love, some for meaning. And you found your path. And it leads to great things. Several months passed, and Lana had already started working on a new series of paintings. She was confident in herself, her abilities, and her future. Emma continued to support her, but now with a different role. She was not only a mentor, but also a friend. Like the studio itself, their journey wasn't over. New horizons, new opportunities, were on the horizon, and they were ready to explore them. The studio, which had begun with one small step, had now become a symbol that sometimes you just need to believe in yourself and go to where you are awaited. And although the future was unpredictable, Emma and Lana knew one thing: they were no longer afraid. The world was full of possibilities. And they were ready to embrace them. Thus, the story of Emma and Lana ended, but the open horizons continued to lead them forward. The studio had become an important part of their lives, but now they knew that their art could change much more than they had ever imagined. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new path.